Welcome to my video update for March 28th, 2017. In this update, I want to talk a little bit about things that I've learned over the last, specifically the last 3.5 months, but really over the last year and a quarter, when I got back into doing video recording and trying to teach myself how to do it as well as I could with the equipment I had, and then what new equipment I might want to get. So I've got several things to share with you. It could end up being a little bit lengthy. I did do a run through of this yesterday and had some issues, and that's yet another lesson learned that actually was on my list, but I didn't heed it myself. So it is always a learning process for sure. Okay, so let's get right to it. Couple things, very obvious. Most of these things are very obvious. But I hope that they're useful to those of you who are considering doing video, young or old, or some of you who have already been doing video and you want to improve your game, because this is always a learning process, and there's always lots to learn within all the different areas of doing videos. So I'm going to go through these a little quickly. I'm also doing a blog post that lists all these 23 items, which is what I have on my list, so you can see the text of them. And I'll also put some links in the comments below, or not the comments, in the description below of some resources you want to take a look at. So rule number one, make sure your batteries are charged in your cameras. Make sure you have memory space on your memory cards. And if you're recording with a smartphone, make sure, kind of similarly, that you have enough space, enough storage space remaining to accommodate the video given the length that it's going to be that you're about to record. Because one problem I had yesterday was I was going along and recording and I ran out of space. And I didn't really even realize it because I'd covered the iPhone screen, because you'll see, and this wasn't on my list, but it should be really, is to train myself to look at the end of the iPhone where the camera actually is. Instead, I find myself looking at myself, which means to you, I'm looking away from you. So I covered the screen and I didn't see any messages. But the first one, make sure your batteries are charged. I had an experience where I was recording, I was monitoring what the camera was seeing with my iPhone, and I happened to look down and I saw that it said can't find camera. So I went over to the camera and checked, and sure enough, the battery was dead. And I got that going, and I think it was even the same night, a little bit later, I got the same message. And this time it was the memory card was full. So those are simple things to take care of and simple things to address. Just put a new battery in every time you start a video, then you're good to go. Or make sure that your card, if it's not a large card, is totally newly formatted. You always format your cards in your camera too. Okay, second category, this is a category on audio. And this is ironic because this is why I'm doing this recording again. I had trouble with the audio in my recording yesterday, thinking everything was hunky-dory, and it was all good. So the rule number three, or item number three, is test your audio. Then test it again, and then test it again. And more importantly, check the loudness level. You don't want it too loud, you don't want it too soft. If it's too soft, as mine was, it turned out, and that goes with another lesson learned later on the list that I'll mention. Mine was too soft, and in order to boost it, it was going to introduce artifacts or noise that would have made it unhearable. And I had even gotten to the point where I'd posted it on YouTube, and I went to listen to it myself, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm all the way up on my computer on volume, and it's too low. So that's an important thing, because audio is really one of the most important things in doing video. It seems odd, but it is. If you're recording indoors, and I've got my notes down here, so I keep looking down to make sure that I'm hitting all the bullet points. If you're recording indoors, avoid rooms where there are hardwood floors or a lot of wooden furniture, metal furniture, where the sound is going to bounce around. Our dining room is like that, and I did a recording of an episode for learning photography in there, and I was using the Video Micro, which I have the iPhone attached to right now, and it was on the camera. It was about 5 to 8 feet away from me, and so it's even worse when the camera, when the microphone is further away from your mouth. The solution for that, of course, is to use a lavalier, which I'll talk about in a second. But because with the lavalier it's close to your mouth, you're not going to get as much bouncing of sound. Therefore, as I'm saying, if you're going to have a camera or an external mic plugged into your camera, which by far you want to do because you don't want to rely on the camera microphone, then you want to make sure that you're in a room that's soundproofed. I could have soundproofed the room some by putting some blankets down, hanging some blankets, but that wasn't really practical to do in our living room, so I didn't do it, and I suffered the consequences. I have a video that has very poor audio in my estimation. So, to the point of using a lavalier, since I've been experimenting, because audio has been my obsession for the last 2 weeks or so, and since I've seen how much better the audio quality is when I use a lavalier mic, like I have this audio-technica ATR 3350 I've had for a number of years, has a long cable on it, so I can actually directly plug it into my camera and be, probably 6 feet or more away, and it's attached to my shirt, and so I can record it. And you'll get much better audio. I tested it yesterday with the dining room. I put this on my iPhone and walked around, and I was getting much better audio. No echoing with the lavalier that I was getting before with the Video Micro. Ironically, though, when I used it last night, because that is what I've learned, is item number 6, seeing that recording directly into a dedicated recorder like the Task MDR40 that I've shown you before, or any recorder is going to give you much better audio quality than if you do it into your camera. That is to say, if you connect the microphone into your camera. By plugging it into my iPhone, I thought I was getting good audio, and when I did the test yesterday, as I just said, it sounded great. But when I did the video update recording last night, with this audio-technica lavalier plugged into the iPhone, the sound was great, but it was too low, and I could not figure out in Filmic Pro how I could boost it. And so I think I attribute it to some degree to the fact that it's a TRS male plug that I had to plug into an adapter which converts it to TRRS, which is what you need for the iOS smartphones. And then I had to plug it in, because I have a 7 Plus, into the 3.52 Lightning connector. So it was going through 2 adapters, and that may have degraded the volume quality. But it goes back to that, the first item in this category, and that is test it and test it again, and then check it and check it again. If you are recording outside and you're some distance from the camera, then by all means consider using a lavalier connected to a dedicated voice recorder, or one of the mics that works well with a smartphone. I just ordered, and should come in a day or so, the Rode Smart Lav Plus, which I've read a lot about. And people are pretty high on the microphone. They're not real high on the recording software. But the nice thing is, instead of having to carry this recorder around my back pocket, which I'm not even sure will work real well, I can carry my iPhone, which I have anyway, plugged into the Smart Lav Plus, and I'm going to get a good recording with good quality audio, and then I can sync that up with my video. But if you're using Premiere or using Final Cut Pro or any of the higher end video editing programs, they pretty much do it automatically for you. So after testing that, I see that that's the route to go. So again, if you're outside, use a lavalier recording directly to a recorder. If you're recording to a smartphone, always put it in airplane mode. I have oftentimes not done that, or most times not done that, and I've noticed when I listen to my recordings, I'll get a beep. Now, I don't get a lot of phone calls, but I do get alerts from news alerts, or messages, or reminders of something I'm supposed to do at a particular time. And if you don't have airplane mode on, that comes through. So I remembered today to put it in airplane mode. I didn't at first, but I got back to it. So that's something you got to train yourself to do. So that's the second category. The third category has to do with lighting. And next to audio, lighting is probably the next most important thing. It's funny, the video almost is not that important compared to audio and lighting. Of course, lighting affects the look of the video, but you need to pay attention to how you're lighting yourself. The LED lights that are available now are getting much better. They're much less expensive than they used to be, even a year or 2 years ago, and they're getting more powerful, it seems. And so connect, those different things together, not terribly expensive, very powerful, pretty small, and still giving a good bit of light, makes them very attractive to use in doing video. If I'm doing a recording down here in my studio, I prefer to use the CFLs, the constant fluorescent lights. I have a couple of them on a holder, a light stand, inside of a softbox with a diffuser in front, and that gives me a nice light for when I'm doing the stand-ups for photography and technology tools, or learning photography when I'm recording down here. But I could see getting by with just the LEDs. I now have I guess 3 LEDs. I've got a small one over here. It's really, and it's fairly powerful. And I've got a relatively new one over here. And those 2 lights are what's lighting me, because the rest of the room is fairly dark, as you can see. I've just got some regular incandescent lights on throughout the room. And the CFLs are not that expensive, maybe $12 a bulb, and you get a couple of them, and then some light stands. So you can really put together, and you can buy kits. Last item in lighting is, if you're recording in the sun, then try to avoid recording on days when the sun's going in and out, in and out, in and out. That happened to me when I was doing 1 or 2 of the recordings for learning photography, and it drove me crazy. So I'm aware of that now. I need to pay attention when I'm deciding where I'm going to record myself outside, and make sure that doesn't happen. Okay, number 13. It is difficult to record while holding a camera in your hand. Vloggers do it all the time. I can't do that very well. And if you have a smartphone, and you're holding it like this, it's hard. You're likely to shake, and a shaky video is not a good video. Even putting it on something like the shoulder pod and attaching, I made a new handle for it. It comes with a little handle. I made a new handle out of PVC pipe. So it gives me a good grip on it. Even just having that is better than trying to do it this way. So whether you're videoing yourself or you're videoing somebody else. So you want to be careful about that and avoid shaky video. That brings me to number 14 and some other items, and I think I'm going to cut it right here and make another version of this, because I don't want this to be too terribly long. We're already about 12 minutes or so. And so I'll encourage you to check part 2 of Lessons Learned. Thank you very much for listening to this video update. I hope you'll tune in for part 2. Goodbye.